Hello, my name is Elle Taormina. I work as an estimator and project manager for an asphalt company. I grew up in Denver, Colorado with separated parents. My mom came from a Catholic family and my dad attended an inner city non-denominational church. And my mother, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, and I were all confirmed in the Catholic Church as babies. When I was still just a baby, my mom took me and my brother to try a church in our neighborhood where my mom had a pretty bad experience that ultimately led her to stop going to church altogether. And I grew up with a fear of organized religion because of it. Growing up, I loved playing sports, soccer, gymnastics, swimming, and cheerleading. Because of my upbringing, in some ways, or in some sense, I've always had God in my life. To be honest, I never really understood who Jesus was because I just wasn't interested. I went a long time living life as the God of my own world. In high school and the following years, I lived a pretty reckless life. Reckless and wild, ditching school, messy relationships, breaking curfew laws, shoplifting, and even experimenting with drinking, smoking, and other substances. The years leading up to COVID, I experimented enough to grow a serious dependency on anti-anxiety medications. I was in denial about how far gone I was, so I thought that I'd have no problems quitting cold turkey. But one day I was at my brother's house and we were watching a movie, and the next thing I know, I woke up in his arms and he was crying over me. And it turns out that I had a seizure, and I was rushed to the emergency room where they told me that I was experiencing withdrawals. And all through COVID, I struggled with depression, as I'm sure many people did. My cousin talked me into taking a course at a media school in Denver where I got an associate's degree in business communications, and I met the love of my life there. His name is Chad, and we just got married in January in Mexico. It wasn't until recently that I really started to understand who Jesus really is, what he's done for me, and the role that he plays in my life. I've always taken a lot of interest in conspiracy theories, and I'd gone down just about every rabbit hole that there is, from deep state to government to Bigfoot. About a year ago, my digging led me to try to understand what I really believed about God. I remember telling Chad, who was my boyfriend at the time, don't want to freak you out and you don't have to take the same journey, but I'm gonna jump into this and I have no idea where it'll go. I soon after became convinced that God was real and that he had a plan for my life. As I dug deeper, Chad and I had many long nights debating, sometimes arguing.
At first, I looked at her and I just thought she was crazy. I gave pushback because I was scared myself. I wasn't ready to make this leap as she was. So yeah, there was definitely some time where the relationship was in question because basically my inability to be ready.
Ironically, it was by listening to a popular political commentator that I became convinced that Jesus actually existed and that he claimed to be God. And I couldn't wait to get my hands on a Bible to read the gospel stories about Jesus. During that time, it became so clear to me the way that I had been living was not God's will for my life. I was full of anger, holding grudges, pride, self-centeredness, worshiping the universe, and living life as if there was no life after this life on earth. Around that time, I remember a specific experience, and I was taking a shower when suddenly I just became overwhelmed with emotion, both grief and joy. Tears just poured out as I fell to my knees, and I began looking back on all my life and just started begging God's forgiveness for the way I'd been living, just selfish, reckless, prideful. But quickly, my grief turned to joy to finally feel connected to God, and it was almost like my own little baptism between me and God. And I truly stepped out of that water with a new view of life. Since that experience in the shower, I've chosen to really take hold of my relationship with Jesus. He gave his life for me on the cross to pay the penalty for my sins, and then he rose again, and I want to know him. This past year, I've continued learning more about Jesus and studying my Bible and applying it to my life as best as I can. After living my own way instead of God's way for so long, I still have a lot to unlearn. But because of my new faith and relationship with Christ, my life has already started to change from the inside out, and I'm learning so much. For one, gratitude, thanking God every day. I just look back and realize that he was with me every step of the way. I'm also learning grace and forgiveness, not holding on to the hurt that I let shape my life and choices. Finally, humility, admitting my wrongs more than wanting to prove myself and be stubborn. And this one has been really hard for me. I try to plant seeds of faith everywhere I can, with family, with friends, strangers. Jesus has calmed my anger and helped in my relationship with Chad immensely. We're both learning to listen closer, forgive quicker, love deeper, and really lean into praying together in good and bad times. I think because of my mom's bad experience with church in my childhood, I thought that I wouldn't be welcome in God's family. But last fall, we started attending Grace Fellowship Church, and we're getting involved, and we've connected with an amazing group of people who have encouraged us in so many ways and have helped us grow our relationship with Jesus. I'm so grateful to have found a church that is so welcoming and really feels like a family. And this is not an infomercial, and I wasn't paid to say that. My life looks so much different than it did just a year ago. Different on both the inside and outside. And it's all thanks to Jesus that I am where I am.